Welcome to our module, Growing and Marketing a New Crop.
This module was authored by Gigi DiGiacomo, Christine Moncada, Adria Fernandez, Constance Carlson, and Craig Sheffer from the University of Minnesota in 2017, and updated in 2026. Narrated by Constance Carlson, with additional narration generated using the AI voice of Hannah from ElevenLabs.
Organic certification rules require that organic farmers plant a rotation of crops to replenish their soil and build organic matter. In this module, we will offer a few tips on how best to evaluate new rotation crops by looking at soils and climate, market, and finance conditions. What will you include in your organic rotation? Organic rotations are more diverse and include other crops in addition to corn and soybean. If coming from a conventional corn-soybean rotation, you may be unfamiliar with crops such as small grains, legumes, and forages. You may need to start growing a crop that is new to you. For the purposes of this module, we will be calling crops that are new to you a new crop. Examples of organic crops for the upper Midwest that may be unfamiliar to you but you may want to consider include wheat, barley, flax, buckwheat, field peas, oats, alfalfa, and sunflower. All have different attributes that may make them more suitable for your specific conditions.
Here we show field pea plants with white flowers, mature oat plants close to harvest, and the immature green seed heads of wheat.
If you are looking for other ideas, try asking other organic farmers in your area about what crops have been successful on their farms. Contact local extension educators and ask for recommendations. You may also consider attending field days and organic conferences that feature new crops and workshops on how to produce them. If you prefer to learn from your desk, check out other modules in this series that discuss how to raise forages, small grains, and other less commonly grown crops. Once you've identified a new crop or two, you'll need to evaluate whether or not each is a good fit for your farm. This can be a difficult question to answer. It's not always easy to find crops that equally satisfy your agronomic needs, market needs, and financial needs. You'll need to consider all three when exploring new crops. Let's begin with agronomic questions, specifically those that concern your current rotation, soil, and climate conditions.
We will then cover markets, enterprise budgets, and other things to consider when growing and marketing a new crop.
What new crops might work best in your rotation? For a corn and soybean rotation, a legume such as alfalfa may provide additional benefits, such as fixing nitrogen, and crops such as a small grain or alfalfa can function to suppress weeds. For more information on choosing rotations and NOP rules on rotations, please watch the rotation module. An important factor in choosing a new crop is making sure it will thrive in the conditions on your farm.
In this picture, we show a snowy field to represent harsh winter conditions that might affect which crops are adapted to this location.
Just like corn and soybean, all crops have specific conditions that will optimize their growth. They may vary in their temperature and moisture requirements, relative maturity, and nutrient requirements. For example, if you are planning to overwinter a crop such as alfalfa or winter wheat, you will need to determine whether it will survive the long Minnesota winters.
In this image, we show two plots with different alfalfa varieties in spring after winter. The winter hardy variety is growing well, while the non-winter hardy variety experienced dieback over winter, so growth is sparse.
New crops may require additional preparation before including them in your operation. pH may need to be adjusted with lime, and organic fertilizers may need to be incorporated to optimize yields. Please watch our module on soil fertility for more information. It's important to make sure that your crop will yield well and that you have the knowledge and skill needed to grow it. That's why it's a good idea to talk with other farmers and extension educators first, and then take your crop for a test run. We strongly suggest doing a bit of your own on-farm research by growing field-scale plots, maybe even testing a few varieties over more than a year. Be sure to take notes about weather conditions, inputs, and yield. You will want some record of what worked and what didn't when making a final decision. Next, let's talk about markets. If you can't sell the new crop you're considering or use it on the farm, you probably shouldn't grow it. As you might imagine, markets for some crops are quite small. Therefore, finding buyers for alternative commodities can be difficult and may not bring much, if any, premium, even when certified organic. This is why so many transitioning and newly certified organic farmers consider it challenging to identify markets for rotation crops and small grains. The best way to overcome this hurdle is to spend more time connecting with buyers. You may even uncover an opportunity to supply a new niche market.
Here we show a retail bag of organic flax seed that was grown in Minnesota.
One of the first things you'll notice when going organic is that there are far fewer processing facilities and grain elevators that handle organic products. As a result, finding buyers for transitioning in organic crops, especially small grains, forages, and legumes, can be difficult. Many transitioning and newly certified organic farmers find themselves looking to brokers, specialized marketing groups, farmer cooperatives, and trade shows to help with selling grain and lining up buyers. Some farmers are beginning to participate in emerging electronic auctions to market their rotation crops. One of the best ways to identify organic buyers is by visiting trade shows in your state or region. Trade shows, usually held in conjunction with skill-building workshops and other conference events, are well attended by organic buyers, who sometimes offer contracts for transitional and/or non-GMO grain, in addition to forward contracts for organic grains and oilseeds. We've listed a few of the more well-known conferences in the Upper Midwest here, and strongly suggest attending one or more shows as you explore transitional and organic markets.
These include the Iowa Organic Conference, the Organic Grain Conference and Trade Show in Illinois, the Minnesota Organic Conference, the Northern Plains Sustainable Ag Society Annual Conference in South Dakota, and the Marbleseed, formerly Moses, Organic Farming Conference in Wisconsin.
When talking with buyers about a new crop, you want to ask 4 basic questions. First, do you offer contracts or buy cash only? Next, be sure to ask what price the buyer is offering and how many bushels or tons they might be interested in purchasing. You'll need to know this information when considering how much to plant. Finally, ask when the buyer might take delivery. In other words, will you be expected to store the crop after harvest? All this information is needed to explore the financial feasibility of your new crop. After doing some market research, you should be able to judge whether there's a viable market for your new crop. If the answer is yes, put your new crop through one last important feasibility test. Explore your finances and examine enterprise budgets. In this next section, we'll take a look at how to develop an enterprise budget for your new crop and calculate potential profit. After all, farmers, like most business owners, can't afford to lose money. Even if planting a crop purely for its soil building capacity, your goals should include breaking even on that enterprise. An enterprise budget can help you determine whether or not your new crop will turn a profit, break even, or lose money. An enterprise budget lists your income and expenses. Your profit or loss is simply calculated by subtracting direct and overhead expenses from gross income.
The formula for calculating your net return, also called profit, is gross income minus direct expenses minus overhead expenses equals profit.
Let's take a closer look at how the enterprise budget works by using an example. For our example, we will calculate the income potential of organic oats. We begin by calculating total crop return per acre by multiplying expected yield by expected value. In this case, the expected organic oat yield is 47.75 bushels per acre. The expected value is $6.33 per bushel. Multiplying these together produces a gross return of $302.26 per acre. Next, we add in any additional income, such as government payments and crop insurance, which in this example is equal to $44.87. Adding crop returns and other income together, we arrive at gross income per acre, which is equal to $347.13. Next, draft a list of all input expenses, the direct or variable costs associated with growing your new crop. In this example, notice that we've included obvious costs, such as seed, fertilizer, fuel and oil, land rent, and hired labor. However, don't forget to include the costs associated with organic certification fees and hauling and trucking. These could be more than you're used to with conventional crops.
The itemized costs per acre of the direct expenses for organic oats in our example include seed at $33.31 per acre, fertilizer at $10.15, crop insurance at $4.33, storage at 40 cents, fuel and oil at $22.18, repairs at $34.80, custom hire at $9.64, hired labor at $4.99, land rent at $77.64, machinery leases at $2.89, utilities at $1.28, hauling and trucking at $1.27, organic certification at $1.98, operating interest at $4.27, and other at $3.14 per acre.
When added together, total direct costs per acre equal $212.27.
This data is from the Center for Farm Financial Management from the years 2011 to 2015.
Finally, you'll want to factor in overhead costs to get an accurate estimate of new crop returns. Overhead costs are those expenses incurred, such as farm insurance and property taxes, regardless of whether you take on a new crop.
The itemized costs per acre of the overhead expenses for organic oats in our example includes family labor and management at $45.25 per acre, building leases at $2.19, property taxes at $7.25, farm insurance at $5.73, utilities at $4.03, dues and professional fees at $2.43, interest at $24.69, machine and building depreciation at $33.83, and other at $6.15 per acre. This data is from the Center for Farm Financial Management from the years 2011 to 2015.
Overhead expenses are distributed proportionally across all crop enterprises. In the example here, overhead expenses total $131.55 per acre. We subtract these direct and overhead expenses from gross income to arrive at net returns per acre equal to $3.31.
The exact calculation is $347.13 of gross income minus $212.27 of direct expenses minus $131.55 of overhead expenses to equal $3.31 of net return per acre.
Many small grain crops like oats are not big moneymakers even when organic premiums are factored in. Others, however, do quite well, depending on market conditions. The chart here shows average net returns for organic rotation crops as reported during the years of 2012 to 2015 by Midwest farmers. and recorded in the Center for Farm Financial Management's FinBin database.
Using data from 59 farms growing on an average of 72 acres, the average net return per acre for organic barley was $62.85. Using data from 74 farms growing on an average of 52 acres, the average net return per acre for organic oats was $42.87. Using data from 7 farms growing an average of 37 acres, the average net return for organic rye was negative $18.26. Using data from 40 farms growing an average of 128 acres, the average net return for organic spring wheat was $209.67. Using data from 141 farms growing an average of 127 acres, the average net return for organic alfalfa hay was $201.54. These figures do not include government payments or the costs of overhead labor and management.
Given the range of returns, it's important to crunch numbers and explore the profit potential of various new crops before making your final planting decisions. If you're growing a crop you haven't grown before, you'll be relying on information from other farmers and buyers for input expense, yield, and price information. Another information source is the Center for Farm Financial Management's FinBin database, as mentioned in the previous slide. FinBin aggregates actual financial data from thousands of farms in the upper Midwest, identified as conventional, transitional, and organic. This is a great place to start if you are looking for average input expenses, yields, market prices, and net returns for a large variety of Midwest grains, forages, oilseeds, and vegetables.
The website for FinBin is finbin.umn.edu.
When developing an enterprise budget, pay close attention to new costs you may incur. Many farmers require new investments when transitioning and/or diversifying crop enterprises. A recent survey of Minnesota farmers found that 74% purchased new equipment and 28% hired custom services when first transitioning to organic.
The source for this data is the Intake Survey cumulative results of the Tools for Transition project in 2012.
Talk with an extension educator and other farmers to learn more about what might be needed to plant your new crop, manage weeds, and harvest. You will also want to explore whether or not additional storage capacity is required when growing a new crop. Similarly, many transitioning farmers observe an increase in labor requirements when first going organic. In fact, in one survey, 34% of Minnesota farmers surveyed reported hiring additional farm labor when transitioning.
The source for this data is the Intake Survey cumulative results of the Tools for Transition project in 2012.
Why the extra labor? Diversified systems can take more time to manage, and organic marketing is typically more time-consuming than conventional marketing. Think carefully about potential labor requirements when growing a new crop and, again, account for these in your enterprise budget. Lastly, when developing an enterprise budget for a new or unfamiliar crop, it's very important to see how net returns hold up when exposed to various risks. Examples of various risks include changes in interest rates that can affect an operating or intermediate loan for new machinery, shortages in organic seed that can dramatically affect input costs, and inclement weather that affects yields. Even your own learning curve when planting a new crop for the first time is a risk that can affect your net return. Risk management advisors suggest varying interest rates, individual input expenses, yields, and market prices in your enterprise budget by 5 to 20% to see how well it performs financially under different conditions. It's easy to do as shown in an example where we varied each budget item individually by 10%.
This table shows the effect on net return per acre when you vary different budget items using the previous organic oat example. When seed costs increase 10%, it will lead to a $3.30 increase in costs per acre, and net return is $7.70 per acre. When land rent increases 10%, it will lead to a $7.70 increase in costs per acre and a net return of $3.30 per acre. When yield decreases 10%, it will lead to 4.7 fewer bushels per acre and a net loss of $19.37 per acre. When market price decreases 10%, it will lead to a negative 63 cents per bushel and a net loss of $19.37 per acre.
You may be surprised how much a relatively small change can affect the bottom line. How well will your new crop perform financially when exposed to different risks? Are you ready to grow a new crop? Before you do, make sure you know the answers to the following questions. Do I have the right growing conditions? Is there a buyer in the market? Can I break even or make a profit? Will my new crop still break even under different risk conditions? Another way of thinking about and evaluating a new crop is to ask yourself, do I have the resources needed to grow a new crop? If not, do you have the access to financing to purchase needed resources? Can you hire them or arrange to share them with another farmer? Next, ask yourself, am I confident that I can grow the new crop? Did you take your crop for a test run? How did it turn out? Ultimately, you'll want to ask, will the new crop benefit the farm operation, and if so, how? Will you build soil quality? Will you improve finances? We've reached the end of our new crop module. Don't forget to watch other modules in our series. Good luck growing your new crop.
This project is supported by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, Organic Transitions Program under Award Number 2013-5, 1106-2-1005. This project is supported by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Agricultural Marketing Service, National Organic Program under the Transition to Organic Partnership Program, TOPP, in the Midwest region. Any opinions, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this publication are those of the authors and should not be construed to represent any official USDA or U.S. government determination or policy. The University of Minnesota shall provide equal access to and opportunity in its programs, facilities, and employment without regard to race, color, creed, religion, national origin, gender, age, marital status, familial status, disability, public assistance status, membership or activity in a local commission created for the purpose of dealing with discrimination, veteran status, sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. For more information about this project, please see organicag.umn.edu, copyright 2026, Regents of the University of Minnesota. All rights reserved.